889.
Okay.
Nine's the last digit.
All right, so who here has glycolysis memorized already? Okay, awesome. Okay, so I like to think about glucose, galactose, and fructose in very much the same way, because the first step in the metabolism of all three of them is the same, okay? So after you have a meal, say you had a piece of sugary candy and you had some sugar in your intestine, that gets digested, the sugar gets into your bloodstream, and then one way or the other, all that sugar is going to be broken down into monomers of either galactose, glucose, or fructose, okay? And each of these is able to freely enter and exit cells. So the first thing that is going to happen with all three of them, when they get inside the cell is going to trap the sugar inside of the cell with a phosphate, okay? So the first step in galactose metabolism is an ATP is going to be used up to add a phosphate and convert it into galactose with a phosphate. Then, same thing with glucose. First step, glucose is going to have a phosphate added, and it's going to become glucose with a phosphate. Don't worry about the numbers too much. Don't worry about complex structures too much unless it helps you. Don't worry about don't even worry about oxygens too much. Just worry about the number of carbons when ATP is used, when NADH is used or created, and then the names of all the molecules. Because if you know the names, you can generally figure out what enzymes are involved. Okay, and so then same thing with fructose. First step, a phosphate is used, it's converted into fructose with a phosphate, and then is trapped inside of the cell, okay? So let's go all the way through glycolysis once the boring way, because you have to do that once for a little bit of context, and then I'll give you guys the memory palace. Okay, so glucose gets in the cell, phosphate is added, gets trapped inside, now we have glucose 6-phosphate. That gets converted to fructose 6-phosphate. Then another ATP is invested, it becomes fructose bisphosphate. So now it just has 2 phosphates, all right? So don't worry too much about the 1 or the 6. That's just some fluff. Just worry about fructose with 2 phosphates, okay? Then that gets chopped in half, and it goes from a 6-carbon molecule into 2 3-carbon molecules, glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and dihydroxyacetone phosphate. Ignore this part for now. Let's just follow what happens when we go down the pyruvate pathway. Okay, glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate gets another phosphate. Don't worry about the 1 and the 3 too much. Just worry about BPG for bisphosphate. Then 3PG, 2PG, PEP, pyruvate, and then pyruvate is converted to acetyl-CoA, which is used in the citric acid cycle to make NADH. All right, so who has it memorized? Okay, yeah, probably not yet. Okay, so whenever I think about glucose, galactose, and fructose, I like to think about cartoon gypsies, like this guy. I like to think about a little face guy who's a hexagon, and he is a glucose gypsy guy, okay? And then galactose is just a galactic gypsy guy, and then fructose is a female gypsy, okay? So the glucose gypsy guy, he's a guy because he has a beard and he has hair, okay? So he looks like a hexagon. Fructose still has 6 carbons, but it looks like a pentagon. So it's a female gypsy because she doesn't have a beard, okay? And galactose, it also has a 6-carbon ring, but it's just a little bit different. So it's a glucose gypsy guy with a space helmet on, okay? And then all of these gypsies are going to be going through a witch hunt whereby they get captured, they get arrested, they get questioned, and what happens at the end of any witch hunt? They get burned at the pot on So that's the really big picture, is all of these gypsies are going through a witch hunt and they're going to get burned on a pyre, okay? So let's just follow Glucose first, okay? So the Glucose gypsy guy, okay, so this was the boring way. Now this is the memory palace way, okay? So, okay, Glucose gypsy guy, he gets into the cell, okay? Gypsies are free. They enter and exit cities at will. They're free spirits. They go all over the place, right? But as soon as that gypsy gets into the city, it gets arrested by a phosphate pikeman, okay? So 1 phosphate is added, all right? So we go from glucose to G6B, okay? Next thing that happens after, so now the glucose can no longer leave the cell, right? The gypsy guy can no longer leave because he's been arrested, which makes a lot of sense because if sugar was able to just leave our cells anytime, that'd be really inefficient. So yeah, the first step is arresting the glucose so it can't escape the cell, all right? Next thing that happens is the guard tugs on his beard to see whether or not he's a guy gypsy or a female gypsy, because in a witch hunt, females are inherently more suspicious, right? So he tugs on the beard, and the beard comes off. So the glucose 6-phosphate, the gypsy guy, loses his beard and becomes a fructose female gypsy with a phosphate, right? So it went from glucose 6-phosphate to fructose 6-phosphate, okay? All right, so now that the guard has found out that it's actually a female gypsy, that's extremely suspicious, so they bring in a second guard. So a second, because you need 2 guards for every potential witch, okay? All right, so second guard comes in, and we get to fructose with 2 phosphates, all right? Now the next step to figuring out whether or not this suspect is a witch is to chop her in half. And if she dies, well, we were wrong, and she was innocent, but, you know, our bad. But if she gets chopped in half and she survives, then she's a witch, all right? So they chop her in half, and she survives. So she was actually a witch. And she gets converted into 2 3-carbon molecules, each with 1 phosphate, okay? And at that point, she has 2 options, kind of like her 2 shoulder angels. She can either glyceraldehyde, lie and hide that she's a witch, deny it, lie and hide, or she can dihydroxyacetone atone for her sin, okay? If she goes with the atone route, she's going to go to, say, life in prison or very long-term prison as a triglyceride in fat, okay? If she goes with the lie and hide option, what's going to happen if a suspected witch is denying that she's a witch? What's going to happen in a witch hunt? Anybody?
She gets burned.
Yeah, they're going to burn her. Exactly. They're going to make her confess, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So, so 2 options. One is the good shoulder angel dihydroxyacetone atone for her sin, or glyceraldehyde lie and hide, try to deny it, in which case they're going to end up burning her at the stake, okay? So if they're going with the burn her at the stake option, first thing that happens is they need to bring in another phosphate, right? Because you need two guards for every witch, all right? And that'll make a little bit more sense later on. There are many layers to this, and as we go through more layers, a lot of these details will make more sense. Okay, so anyway, just following glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate to 1,3-BPG. Now, from here to here is the countdown to burning the witch at the stake. Okay, and when they throw her on the pyre to burn her, the guards aren't going to be there with her, burning with her, right? So both of those phosphates are going to have to leave somewhere in between here and here, right? They happen at these two steps. Don't worry about that too much. Just know that both of those phosphates are obviously going to leave and be converted into ATP before the witch is burned on the pyre, okay? So anyway, let's start over again, okay? So we start out with Glucose, a gypsy guy. He's free roaming. He can enter and exit cities as he pleases. He gets into the city, gets arrested. Glucose 6-phosphate. Glucose with a phosphate pikeman on a 6. Okay? Tugs on the beard, it comes off. No longer has a beard, so it's a pentagon shape now. Still 6 carbons, but a pentagon shape. So fructose for he's actually a female gypsy. Okay? Very suspicious, so bring in a second guard. Fructose bisphosphate. Fructose with 2 phosphates. Chop her in half to figure out whether or not she is a witch. She survives, and the 2 halves are her 2 shoulder angels. Dihydroxyacetone, atone, or glyceraldehyde, lie and hide, each of them with 1 phosphate. Just worry about this path for now. Second guard comes in, because you need to have 2 guards for every witch. 1,3-BPG. Then we go to the countdown. The executioner is going to count to 1 from 3. Goes 3, 2, and then right at the last second, the witch decides that she's going to confess. And no offense to any of y'all who were cheerleaders in high school, or cheerleaders in general, or people who were on the pep squad, but sometimes there's always that one person on the pep squad who's just a real witch, if you know what I mean. So anyway, he's counting down 3, 2. She decides to confess, and she yells out, "Okay, I was on the pep squad. I was on the pep squad." But it's a witch hunt, so they're going to burn her anyway. So they throw her on the pyre. Okay. Okay. So those are all the steps from glucose straight down this pathway to pyruvate. Okay. And then once the witch is actually on the pyre, there are I guess I would say 4 really important options to know about. There are actually a few more than that, but just know about these. Okay, so first off,